I very much appreciate Chris taking time out of his day. I know he's particularly jammed now that he's been nominated and he's sitting around. We'll hope that that hearing gets called quickly. So really what you heard from Chris was the call. NTSB made a call to API, and I want to make sure, well, most of us understand this, just making sure everyone does. Why did they direct that call to API? API is an ANSI accredited standards development organization, and it's essential in the US as well as elsewhere to have an accredited process that you can follow for establishing a consensus standard. So they have that capability, they've taken it on, but you know, to their credit, they opened it up and brought everyone in, including people representing public interests, not all operators. These are regulators at a state level, federal level, and elsewhere. So NTSB made the call. I think we were all probably ready for it at that time. We've taken it and responded. And early on, and I think wisely, API chose Ron McLean, who's the president of Kinder Morgan Liquid Pipelines, to chair this committee. I'm sure that Ron hasn't learned anything during this, but those of us who are on the committee knows that he knows how to run a meeting, I'll tell you that. No, I think Ron's done a great job. He's been an excellent chairman. He's also a member of our advisory committee at PHMSA, so I'm really pleased to introduce to you Ron McLean.
Okay, well, thanks, Jeff. It really was a privilege to lead the team. A lot of independent thoughts came together. I think in the end, we produced a very good product. And I'd like to walk you through both where we are right now and maybe a little bit of how we got there. You know, our prize we saw from the very beginning wasn't just to get a standard written, but to actually drive improvement in pipeline safety. And so, as Jeff indicated, API was tasked with creating a standard. There are many standards already in industry, as Chris outlined, but there was none specific to the pipeline industry. So that was really our task. And the result is the API recommended practice 1173 that's currently being balloted and under comment review, and a little bit more on that in a moment. But the key components were how top management develops and processes to reveal and mitigate safety threats. And that focus on top management, I mean, there's a lot of tensions in life when you're trying to run large companies. And sometimes some things get done when you have time. And a big part of this whole process was to put what's really important at the forefront in how time is spent within top management, and really provide for continuous improvement. Really, if you ever think you've arrived, that's when you're in trouble. You know, it's constant improvement, learning from others, learning from your own incidents. And then the third bullet, it was to make compliance and risk reduction, kind of two separate categories, routine through intentional actions by top management, and employees. And that's a pretty inclusive group. I want to just touch on two words there. Making things routine. You know, that's something we say at Kinder Morgan. We want certain activities to be done routinely. And I stole a word from Andy Drake of Spectra with intentionality. And those two words really go together quite well. If you do them with intentionality and you do it over and over and over, the important things become routine. And that doesn't mean not important, but they've been pushed to the forefront, and if you do them, they become habit, and you do things with intentionality. And then a big part of the effort was to make sure that what we created was scalable for very large companies and for small operators, and it really just provides the framework. A lot of other procedures have to be developed underneath that. Just a few minutes on the team. I'm not going to read all the members. I hope you'll take time to look through this list, and if you know some of the members, express some appreciation. I mean, they spent nearly 2 years working through this process, at least 2 days a month with outside assignments, sometimes more than 2 days a month, some fairly expensive travel. Most of our meetings were held in D.C., some were hosted by others across the country. but a tremendous commitment by the team members. And as you can see where the team members came from, the stakeholder groups of all kinds are represented, from oil pipelines, gas pipelines, distribution, small operators, regulators, both federal and state, and NTSB, and the public was very well represented as we worked through, what are we getting to here? And I'd like to say, as Jeff alluded to earlier, the committee meetings initially were pretty chaotic. I mean, everyone came with an agenda to the meeting of things they wanted in the standard or not in the standard. And I have to say, and with really a lot of appreciation to the team members, people got beyond their individual agendas and really began to function as a team. What's the best thing for all the stakeholders? And I think what we've produced as a RP1173 is the best document we could have over the last 2 years. And maybe we'll make it better if we receive comments, and a little bit more on how that works in a minute. But take time to thank a couple of them if you know them. As Jeff also indicated, this was driven by an NTSB recommendation after Marshall, Michigan. And one of the things we said within the committee a number of times, the cheapest knowledge you get is that you learn from others. The most expensive knowledge you get is that you go out and learn for yourself. So taking these industry reports and incident reports and kind of delving into them, what do they mean? How did this happen? How can I avoid that? Really contributes to your continuous improvement and a lot of how this document worked. But these were the 8 recommendations, and this was a cut and paste from the Marshall, Michigan recommendation to API, these 8 elements. And the committee spent a tremendous amount of time, and I believe we explicitly addressed each of these 8 recommendations in the document, and probably a couple more that we thought were important. As we wrestled with them, I think we got it to where they're practical and doable. Just a couple of other observations about RP 1173. It's a little more philosophical than other RPs and standards. It's a little more abstract. I mean, it sets a very high bar for performance of top management, and employees. So people are going to have to think through, how does this philosophical document, and it has some explicit requirements as well, but how does that affect how I think about running my organization as an operator? How do I get it to be functional throughout the organization? How do I document? So I think it's probably one of the more performance-based RPs that exist under the framework. We also spent a lot of time talking about safety culture and the relationship of safety culture to the 10 elements. And I don't believe any other document has tried to tackle that relationship the way this document has. And everyone has a safety culture. They're not all good. But to successfully implement the 10 elements that are recommended, you have to have a good, positive safety culture. And in fact, if you have that culture, your elements will be easier to implement, more buy-in from your company. But also, as you implement, I think it'll grow a positive safety culture as well. So I think the two naturally go together. I think RP 1173 has the potential to impact safety in the industry more than any other standard. And here's why. If industry, working with a lot of things, we worry about a lot of things. Are the right tools out there? Do we evaluate right? What do the regulations say? But this document overarches all of those things. I think it will cause operators to think proactively about what could happen and what they can do to mitigate those risks. And if that's done with the intentionality, if it becomes part of the routine, I think we'll see huge benefits to industry and public and regulators in the cause of safety performance. And then RP 1173, it provides an overarching set of ideas for management and employees to pursue safety improvement. And I think that becomes obvious if you read it. And then the ideas have evolved through months of team discussion. And again, that was where we became more collaborative in what we agreed upon. But I want to make sure everyone understands we believe this is practical. It's doable. It's within reach of operators. This isn't some abstract thing that's out there that people aspire to. The committee believes it's doable and it's practical. There are 10 elements that we worked through, and each of the elements are described, I think, in adequate detail to let people figure out, do I have procedures and policies that really implement the concept? There's a section 15 that actually describes how each element relates to safety culture and what the benefits back and forth are. So I hope you'll take time to read those things. But there's no particular order in these other than I think the committee felt strongly that leadership and management commitment were certainly at the top of the list. And as we talked through what was second, we elevated stakeholder engagement to be number 2 because sometimes it's kind of put on as an afterthought. Purposefully, we elevated it to the second element. And then all the others, I wouldn't say on any less or weaker footing, but they're not in the 1 or 2 positions. So there is something to the order of these things. And then I would like to talk a little bit about where we are on our timeline. As we've noted, I mean, for 18 months, we've been actively working on it. There were probably 6 months before that where we were trying to build the right group of stakeholders and make sure every group was represented. But we're currently in the balloting period. And that takes a period as outlined on this timeline chart. And by August 1st, that period for comments will close. The committee will consider every comment that has been submitted. Now, we did a draft set of comments before. We actually got about 900 comments. The committee wrestled with all of those. They didn't necessarily require individual responses because they were draft, and we were trying to make the document before we went to ballot as robust as possible. But it was not required. We just went through that to try to listen to what industry had to say. But in the comment period we're currently in, every single comment under the ANSI process will be documented. Did we accept it? Did we not accept it? Or did we accept it provisionally? And we'll track every single one of those with feedback to operators and other interested stakeholders. We are hopeful in the first comment period and balloting session, this thing will be approved and become a published standard. However, given how many questions we're likely to see from the first balloting period, we allowed in our timeline a second balloting. So if in the first balloting we make some substantive changes, something beyond editorial, we'll have to resubmit it for another comment period with balloting, and the timeline allows for that. So even if we do go through a second balloting and comment period, we hope to conclude and publish by December 1st of 2014. So anyway, we look forward to your comments. I would like to encourage everyone to read the entire document, think about it, don't just start linearly through the document and make comments as you see things. See how it fits with the other elements and especially how it works with Section 15. And then after you kind of got the aggregate of the sense of the document, then go back and comment. And we look forward to receiving those from all stakeholders. So, Jeff, I'll give it back to you. And it's been a privilege to chair the committee, and I think we've got a really good product out there.
Okay, thank you, Ron. So we're actually right on time. So I wanted to say we'll take a break now for about 15 minutes, and then we'll be back in here. I actually have at 10:50. That seems a lot longer than needed, correct? Okay, we're going to try to get everybody rolling here. So thank you, Masood. Yes, how about if we shoot for 10? Oh, my God, I can't believe after how many times I looked at that agenda that's too long. We'll probably try to get back in here in about 20 minutes, okay? So we'll close the doors. You'll get the signal. For those of you on the webcast, somewhere around 10:25 or so. Okay, thank you all.